Welcome back, friends. Today our question is, what is it actually like to buy a house in this very strange market? Right now, it is the end of May in 2026. If this is your first time seeing me, my name is Sarah. I've been selling properties in San Diego for 16 years. I would love to help. If you know anybody looking to buy or sell a property, make sure that you check out my links as well, and please subscribe. Let's get into it. Throughout the US right now, there are far more homes on the market than there are buyers who are actively looking to purchase a home. So that definitely tells you a little bit of what the market is like. I'm going to share some information about what the national real estate market is like overall as it pertains to the economy, and some information about what my local market here in San Diego is doing. As I mentioned, there are more people trying to sell properties than there are people trying to buy properties, and the interest rates really are still not that great. And so that tells you that a lot of buyers in the market right now have some power, they have some leverage, and they are getting good deals. Although I haven't personally had any clients do a short sale since probably 2011, I have started to hear from a few real estate agents that I know that they're starting to see their first short sale or even foreclosure kind of sprinkled in here and there. But remember, we were seeing zero for so many years. So that also kind of gives you an indication of what's going on in the market. In this video, I do want to share primarily what it's like to be the buyer in this market, although I'll make a separate video about what it is like to be the seller in this market. So being a buyer, you have a lot of options, which is great. You may find that in certain areas, you don't necessarily have a lot of options, but across the board, you do. You have more options than over the last few years, that's for sure, and you have less competition. In fact, we're starting to see buyers just making offers under the list price, regardless of whether the true value is at or potentially above the list price. And that is something really unique to this market. Is in the previous years, a lot of times buyers would have to come in at or even above the list price in order to get the home. And right now, we're seeing that sometimes homes, they'll appraise for higher if the sellers chose to do an appraisal prior, or the agents are confident that the value based on other properties selling is higher. So buyer's mindset is like, well, if you have no other offers, then why would I pay more? I'm going to start wherever I want to start as far as this offer process, and I don't necessarily care if you're offended. We're seeing that here and there too. I think it's also important to consider that from the buyer's perspective, just because they are making a low offer doesn't mean that they are going to be getting that house for such a steal that their payments are going to be very affordable and reasonable. Because at least in my market in San Diego, where the home prices are still relatively high, I think especially respective to the interest rates being high, you have people who are getting a steal of a deal because they're paying under market value or under the appraised value, but they're still having to pay $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 a month for their mortgage. In my market, though, not everything is going under the list price. In fact, one of the listings that I recently sold last month set the record for highest sales price in 4 years. And I think even longer before that, there was just one outlier that made it the highest sales price in 4 years. And that had a lot to do with the location within the complex, staging the property, painting the property, all of that. So it's not a guarantee that you'll be able to get something under the list price. You really have to look at how long has this property been on the market, talking to the listing agent, or your buyer's agent would talk to the listing agent. What's this client's motivation? How soon do they want to sell? What's the property worth? What can I afford? There are so many factors that go into what price a buyer ends up paying. There are other strategies that buyers are trying and sometimes succeeding with in this market in terms of changing the terms so that they can get exactly what they want for this home, because it's not just about the price. So we're seeing more of buyers asking for more repairs. We're seeing more buyers asking for termite clearance in the offer. That may be a California thing. In your state, you might not have termites very frequently. It might not be like a standard point of sale thing, but it is here. We're starting to see more buyers ask for closing cost credits. So they'll say here, my offer is $1 million, but I want you to credit me $20,000 so that I end up paying less in closing costs. I save some of that money in the bank and I end up financing more, but saving money in the bank to do repairs, remodeling, etc. Another thing that I'm seeing a lot of with buyers is that they are a little bit pickier. Now, hopefully that doesn't offend anybody, because it doesn't really matter. When you're buying a house, it's whatever you want. You don't have to buy a house that you don't want. You're going to buy a house that you like. But their expectations are typically higher, I think, and that's because they're aware that home prices are not low and interest rates are not low. And we have, your property taxes are not low, and insurance is very high depending on what area you're in. So they're like really factoring in all of that and going, look, if I'm going to pay $8,000 a month, I don't really want a property where I'm going to have to come in and paint the whole thing. Now, something like paint, that's really, really easy, and that's very affordable, relatively speaking, when you look at all of the things that could be an issue on a home, maybe electrical work or a new roof, etc. But we're seeing people say, okay, the seller chose to do a lot of really bright colors, and either I want them to change it back, or I'm going to offer a lower price, or I just don't even want to deal with this, because for this price, my expectation is that the home looks beautiful, clean, like a model home. Most qualified buyers do end up working with a real estate agent. And another thing to consider is the fact that the majority of the time, their real estate agent is still getting paid by the seller. That is, of course, negotiable. The seller does not have to compensate the buyer's agent. And this is a huge consideration because in August of 2024, that's really when that whole everything changed, because the National Association of Realtors lost their lawsuit. At that time, that made it so that we can no longer offer out a certain percentage or a compensation on the multiple listing service. Instead, the buyer's agent had to write their requested commission in the offer. Well, what I've been seeing a lot of is not only are sellers willing to compensate, because keep in mind, they want to get the property sold, and they know that if they don't compensate the buyer's agent, the buyer is either going to walk or they're going to end up paying their agent and offering you as the seller a lower price. So that's a lot of what I'm seeing. And as someone who's had a lot of listings lately, buyers too, but I've had more listings in the past couple of months, I have been seeing buyer's agents ask for pretty high commissions. We'll just say that. I'm not going to tell you what they ended up with, but yeah. All that being said, the summary is you might get a really good deal in this market. Hopefully you're planning to hold on to that property long term, because we don't know how the market's going to predict over the next couple of years. Nobody does. And you might not get a good deal. It depends on the desirability of that property, where you're buying, all of that, but it definitely is more in line with a buyer's market. If you're a real estate agent, let me know in the comments, where do you sell houses? By the way, that's important because I want to keep you in mind for referrals. And also let me know what you're seeing in your market overall, because I have heard from some real estate agents that they're living in an area where it's still really a seller's market. I find that very interesting, but every market is different. It's possible. If there are any real estate topics that you'd like to learn more about, please let me know in the comments as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.